afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Caring for the Caregivers, Sensory Solutions for Caregivers CTSD. My name is Sarah Ritchie. I'm the volunteer coordinator at the Ehlers-Danlos Society, and I am your moderator today. This webinar is part of our ongoing series, Living with EDS and HSD. So this is how today's webinar is going to work. Webinar attendees will be muted at all times during the webinar. If we have time left at the end of the webinar, Crystal will try to get to as many of your questions as possible. So what that means is that any point during the webinar, you are able to type any questions you may have into the question box at any time. And please make sure you're submitting them to that question box and not to chat. I can't guarantee we will see your question in the chat. Crystal will not be able to see or respond to any of the questions until the end of their presentation. Please do not send your questions more than once. It will not increase your chances of having your question answered. It will only make it harder for us to sift through the questions to make sure we're able to get to as many as possible. Now, Cristol Barrett O'Loughlin joins us today. She is a seasoned executive and storyteller. A former UCLA instructor, she co-founded advertising firm, the Craftsman Agency, and is humbled to advise global brands, such as the NBA, Disney, Fox, Cisco Systems, and Google. During her tenure at IBM Life Sciences, she helped accelerate advancements in cheminformatics and biotechnology. As founder and CEO of Angel Aid Cares, Crystal is fiercely passionate about providing social, emotional, physical, and financial reliefs to mothers of children with rare diseases. You can watch her TEDx talk at www.angelaidcares.org. Thank you so much for being with us today, Crystal.
Thank you. I am so honored. This has been many months in the making, and the team at the Ehlers-Danlos Society is just so organized, and it's just been wonderful getting to today. I have a particular shout out for a couple of families that I have had the pleasure of knowing and working with. A young woman here on the West Coast in California who was diagnosed with EDS last year and is getting her ground, getting her feet beneath her in this new world, as well as a shout out to her mom and the rest of the family. And I have a deep, close connection with another family on the East Coast of the United States, also a patient of EDS, but also a rare mom at the same time. So I just wanted to dedicate this presentation to both of these families today. And with that, I just thought I'd take a few minutes to introduce Angel Aid. So we believe in uplifting rare families by caring for the caregivers, in particular mothers who are the primary caregiver about 82% of the time. So I've been in the rare disease space for a long time, and I'll just take a few moments to talk about our family and my experience. But what had become increasingly obvious over the last several years is that there's incredible advancements in treatments and eventually curing many of our diseases in the rare disease space, but there were not enough support services for the family. So sort of broadening the lens to, of course, focus on patients, but broadening the lens to include the support structure around that patient. And so our belief is tip of the arrow is working with moms, and that will sort of branch positively throughout the family. So that's our belief. And I thought I would just go ahead and frame our community. We're all part of it, so we know these statistics, you know, by heart. But for those who may be joining that aren't as familiar, we know that rare diseases impact more people than cancer and AIDS combined. We don't always hear about rare diseases, however, because there are 7, some say 8,000 different rare diseases. So what we have are micro communities of less than 50,000 patients and the families that are supporting them. We know that 350 million people suffer from a rare disease globally. and that 95% lack FDA-approved treatments. We're currently in a situation where there are still no cures. And as a rare disease sibling myself, just to tell you a few words about our family, the Barrett family. My parents met in high school, captain of the football team and head drill team leader. They fell in love right away, married soon after, and had a basketball team of kids within just a few years. And it became increasingly obvious to my mother, because she was caregiving for all of us, that my oldest brother, Richard, he was like the golden boy. He was developing very naturally, and that Jared and David were not on the same growth trajectory. They were having a lot of symptoms and problems, and lots and lots and lots of doctor's appointments trying to figure out what was happening. And my mother was actually 8 months pregnant with Randy, her fourth son, when the doctors at UCI identified the disease. I was an accident a couple of years later, but by then they had developed an amniocentesis test. So I was one of the first amnio babies, and they said, okay, it's a little girl and she does not have the disease, so you're safe to have her. So I came into the world in the context of an older brother who was, as I mentioned, not affected by this disease called mucopolysaccharidosis. It's a lysosomal storage disorder disease, and three older brothers with the disease. So our experience as a family was very loving and very connected on the one hand, and very difficult and challenged on the other hand. And eventually Randy, David, and Jared passed away in their teens. And the reality is the caregiving component and the complexities and difficulties of raising healthy and very symptomatic children kind of shattered our family apart. My parents divorced. And the boys went to live in a hospital environment because they needed full-time care. Life progressed. And with that came this perspective. And it's actually been literally, like, I'm 49 years old, just had my birthday last week. And, half a century in the making is this sort of awareness, this understanding that it really isn't post-traumatic stress disorder that our rare community, really contends with. It's this constant chronic trauma. It's ongoing. So from a point of diagnosis, or really for a lot of our community, undiagnosis, but a point of awareness around symptoms, is this very medical life. We go into doctor regularly. We are constantly analyzing our own symptoms, explaining, having conversations, sort of reliving the experience. And so we're in this just constant, what I call CTSD, and have witnessed it firsthand, in particular in my mother. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I just wanted to set a baseline, because chronic traumatic stress disorder is not actually a named condition. It's not a recognized state of being. PTSD is, and we know it well for military and veteran families and other kinds of communities, but it's not one that we often apply to our own. And so I really want to bring this to the light and make a point of recognizing that our experience in rare disease is quite different, because it's perpetual and it's ongoing. And there is those moments, I think, of that question, like, why me? Why has this happened to me? Why has this happened to my family? What is the purpose of pain? What is the significance of suffering? And what I can say to you, what I can offer to you, is just my perspective, that suffering really sows the seeds of empathy. That in truly having experienced deep and significant pain, you have the ability to not sympathize with another human being, but truly empathize with another human being that may be going through something different. And that's that sort of circle of life. That's that side of humanity that that we are fueled by, right? We go to the light, but there's always, darkness on the other side. And having the experiences that we have with health challenges actually makes us sort of superhuman in many ways, superhuman in terms of our heart and our capacity to love and to support others that are going through this experience. It's that empathy that makes us human. And when we see someone hurting, our heart is triggered. Our heart goes out to them. That's what makes us human versus, a plant or an animal. So that empathy, that empathetic response is very well honed in us. If you have the opportunity or are a parent, you really understand that you truly do wear your heart on your sleeve. But we can have those maternal instincts, those loving and empathetic instincts for anyone and everything around us. It doesn't just have to be in the context of parenthood. And what I would offer to you is that empathy, that deep humanistic reaction and response, that you are worthy of that same empathy and love response, that loving yourself is just as important as giving to others and being there for others and understanding and supporting others and their life experience. And it's so hard for us to accept that, isn't it? It's so hard to focus the light in and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And so what I would say is that we don't have to make these huge acts. They don't have to be these, big visual, gigantic, monumental acts of self-care. That we can do things on a micro level to sustain ourselves and our own sense of well-being. And so what I'd like to invite you to do is breathe. I'd like for you to please set down your pens. Yes, I'm serious. We're going to do an exercise right here. So please set down your pens or your phones or anything else that you have in your hands. Put your feet sort of grounded on the floor. And take a moment, if you'd like to close your eyes, you're welcome to. And we're going to breathe 3 times together. And on the last breath, we're going to exhale in an Om. And just watch the effect on your body. And so I'd like you to please take a deep breath in and exhale out. And take another deep breath into your belly and exhale out. And last one, deep breath in, and exhale with an Om. And I would ask that you open your eyes and just take a moment to reflect on how your body feels at this moment. And so that is an act of just gentle self-care, an act of gentle self-empathy that we can take at any time. Just a few deep breaths. And just driving home that importance that we have to heal ourselves first before we can give over our love to others. if we're going to do that in a sustainable way. And this is so important for caregivers, but it's equally important for patients and for really anybody on the planet to understand that, start with your own well-being, and your capacity to support others will expand exponentially. Okay, so self-care, I will tell you, I just get so much resistance to this concept. How am I going to find the time? How am I going to do this self-care? What is it? It's sort of this innate wisdom and knowledge that we have, but we sort of need to be reminded of the things that we can do. And what I will tell you is that there is a clear path, and it's not complicated, but it is radical. It is a commitment that you need to make in your heart and in your mind and literally in your body, to have radical self-care. To put your needs above others is not natural always. It's not your first inclination, but to find those moments of quiet intention can make a huge, huge difference in your health and your well-being and of those around you. And so let's talk about this. So I, sort of had ideas about this, but I really didn't get it until I became the patient. So Sarah had mentioned, these big global jobs that I was doing at IBM and running an advertising agency. And I was so privileged and honored to do that work, and really loved it. I'm a super cerebral person and was just traveling around the world and working with big clients, and really forgetting to take care of my sleep, my body, and my just sort of general sense of well-being. And it happened. I'm not going to say I caused it to happen. These things are so complicated, physically and mentally, but I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I'm so happy to say that they caught it early, but it was a huge wake-up call. I've never really had any sort of major medical in my life. And so suddenly here I am, dependent on other people, in bed and in recovery mode. And then once you're on the other side of recovering from one type of symptom, other symptoms present themselves even in the treatments, as you so well know. So I'm so delighted to say that I'm in remission, that I'm 3.5 years cancer-free, and that was a journey that was really intense for a period of time. And I'm so grateful to, my friends and family and Pi Beta Phi sorority sisters and a whole community from school and that supported our family while we were going through that. But as you know, it doesn't ever leave you. It's sort of always at the back of your mind that you may be in a worsened medical state. So whatever your symptom management is, this is kind of a constant reminder, whether it's super top of mind or in the back of your mind. And it caused me to be very philosophical and really spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what is the new normal? What is life going to look like? We talk about the new normal now, especially in the world that we're living in. And I really liked the perspective. I provide a kind of a click journey to get to this piece, but it talks about really the idea that you have huge expectations on your life and huge expectations on what health and wellness looks like in your life. And when you lose that really what you were losing is a dream. It's an idea of what you thought life was going to be like, and that you're not losing the past, you're only losing your expectations for the future. And that if you can reframe your mind and reframe your daily rituals and life experience, that can be a very positive path for health and wellness. regardless of what symptoms you're working with. And we all know these kind of superhumans that, despite the difficulties, and some of those difficulties can be really real, that somehow they find a way to be positive and uplifted, and somehow they find a way to find purpose in their pain. And how do they do that is sort of what I'm so keenly interested in. And this is actually my daughter on the beach in the San Francisco Bay Area at sunset of her 12th birthday. And I love this photo. It's just filled with all of the innocence and exuberance of life. And I also, as her mother, know that she will be faced with difficult decisions because my daughter carries the same genetic DNA that I carry. So I'm a carrier of MPS and had quite a few difficult decisions to make in forming a family. And she will have her own journey with MPS one day. And so, my intention as her mother is to raise her in an environment where she can see and bear witness to the difficulty and the pain and the challenges that others are going through, so she can see the triumph and the victory and the overcoming that also is so prevalent in our rare disease community. And I have the great privilege of witnessing that every day, working with mothers of children with rare diseases. Puts me in a daily interaction of courage. Courage is a weighted word, right? Courage can be, I got out of bed this morning to, I started a foundation and we raised $10 million. There's a huge range of what courage is. And if you have embraced the premise that self-care, is where your starting point is, then you can celebrate every act of motivation, self-motivation, every act of supporting yourself and your family in whatever condition that you're in. So we learn a lot from our Rare Mother community, and I thought it worth sharing. We actually conducted a study with Indiana University School of Social Work for the better part of last year, and interviewed mothers of children with rare diseases across America predominantly. And the patterns that came back were extraordinarily simple, right? Not complicated asks. I'm just looking for a listening ear without judgment. When I talk to friends or family or neighbors, they're always so quick to jump in with solutions. And really, I just want to be heard. And I'd like to hear stories that are similar to mine so that I know I'm not crazy, right? Especially in this odyssey we're in around diagnosis and symptom management. We're constantly interacting with doctors and well-meaning professionals that may jump to a conclusion or make a recommendation that isn't quite where we know intuitively we needed to get to in terms of an answer. So hearing those stories is very validating, just on a humanistic level, just knowing that that someone else has been living through it or has had that experience. And so we know that that's an important part of services that we can provide, is just telling stories and bringing those to the light. And then self-care. I just need a little time to help me do a little bit for myself. And the respite support, these are real challenges, and we're partnering and brainstorming and bringing solutions to the community every day. But what I hope to show you in sort of the back half of this webinar is some micro moments of self-care that you can do every single day. we'll talk about that. I just thought it's worth mentioning, one of our advisors, Dr. Eppel, published a book called The Telomere Effect, and would love to know in our Q&A if anybody has been exposed to this research or have heard of telomeres before. But basically, think of telomeres as sort of your nerve endings. And in the context of chronic traumatic stress, where we're constantly being thrown into these medical environments and symptom management and interpersonal relationships and potentially financial stressors and other kinds of stressors in our lives, our telomeres, our nerve endings, get frayed. And it's actually a direct correlation between the health of your telomeres and your lifespan. And so if you're getting frayed year after year after year, you're effectively impacting, the length of your life. And certainly in talking to the EDS and HSD community, we have so many other considerations, and I'm so sensitive to that. But just in general terms, I think the visualization of understanding these telomeres is really important, because what the research also shows, and this is what Dr. Eppel really specializes in at UCSF, is that if we embrace daily habits, those kind of micro rituals we're going to talk about in a moment, that those restorative behaviors like sleep and connectivity in either one-on-one or group environments, physical activity, and having a sense of purpose in life, that those can repair the telomeres. So the frayed nerve endings can actually regenerate, and you can put yourself on a path to wellness. And I'm such a visual person. You've probably seen that in this presentation because there's so many different slides and visuals, but having that kind of visualization for me, when I wake up in the morning and I don't feel like going for a walk, or I really kind of want to reach for, the Skittles or whatever it is that, that I know makes me perfectly imperfect. Sometimes what will help me on a positive path is that visualization. Like, what am I gonna do for my telomeres today? It's sort of kind of a silly concept, or not a silly concept, a silly visualization against a very real and documented effect. So the antidote to chronic traumatic stress disorder is what I would indicate as sensory self-care. And so what are the five senses? I mean, we have a sense that we know our five senses, and you can probably rattle them off. I've listed them for you here. But sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. And we know that as human beings, we are driven. We have sort of this affinity for a dominant sense, right? And so if you have a dominant sense of touch, you're going to be a very tactile person. You'll learn better if you have hands on, right? And if you're visual like I am and auditory like I am, you'll gravitate towards activities that are in that area. But I encourage you to go beyond your dominant sense and think about some of your other senses as well, because those can be real tools in kind of expanding your repertoire, your tool kit, if you will, of self-care, opportunities for self-care. So we're just looking for those micro moments a day for self-care. So let's talk about, I'll just share a few examples from my world to hopefully bring this to life. And then you'll need to think about, well, what are the things that I can do? What are the habits that I already have in my life that can be reframed in a positive way? So we'll start with taste. I used to wake up, this was a couple years ago, and really struggle. I had this like hate relationship almost with the drugs that I need to take that that are part of my treatment, my anti-cancer treatment, and so I was finding myself sort of skipping treatments and getting really grumpy and just playing a lot of mind games around something that is inevitable that you know that you should do for yourself. And I was like, okay, I got to rethink this. I got to reframe this. And so now what I do is I make my that one pill that I have to take every single day, I make it a celebration, sort of an act of self-care. So Vega shakes are, protein powder. There's tons of different ones. It doesn't have to be Vega, but any sort of protein powder that you could create a healthy shake. So I take pieces of fresh kale and I have a Vitamix, and I actually mix up a shake for 3 days. And then when it's time to sit down and take that one pill in the morning, it becomes habitual. I have my shake every morning, I take my pill, but I've surrounded that with 12 other pills. So these are all my goddess pills. These are my hair, skin, and nails. These are my, vitamin D3 and vitamin E for skin. These are, calcium and just a whole cocktail of mushroom concoctions that I got from my holistic healthcare practitioners. So just having this sort of concoction of things that I take in the morning with a shake, and it becomes a non-event. It just becomes like not a big deal around, and it's habitualized, something I do every single day. Every couple of days I make a new batch of shake. And so think about, from a taste standpoint, it could be coffee. You could be sourcing your coffee from, a coffee company that is a woman-owned business. And so when you're drinking your coffee, you're feeling a sense of empowerment. So just think about something that you could reframe around taste. And touch. So touch is so big for so many people, and it is for me. So when I was going through treatment, a dear friend of mine sent me a robe, and it sounds so simple. It's just a super soft microfiber robe, and it's my go-to. At the end of a long day, I come home, shed my work clothes, and put on the super soft robe, and that is my let down, right? Could be a blanket, could be sheets that you choose for your bed, so that each time you're coming into them, that becomes a sleep aid. Could be a car cover. It sounds so 80s, right? But some sort of, sheepskin cover for your seat. So each time you slide in behind the wheel, not that we're driving a lot these days, but when we start driving again, all of these little micro moments, if you're touch driven, or even if you aren't, what could you do to reframe that, to make that an act of self-care, something that you do for yourself, that puts you on a path to wellness? And sound. So audio driven. There are so many incredible meditations, and this one in particular, I just thought I would take, a quick moment and share.
Hi, this is Pod McGordon, and I would like to welcome you to the Daily Insight.
Right, so these are at our fingertips now. Insight Timer is free. You don't even need a subscription. You can just download and listen to. It's the most listened to meditation app. There's others. There's Headspace. They have meditations for every single kind of thing you can imagine, and you can find your favorites. And if it's not a meditation, maybe it's a set of records that you used to play in your childhood, if you've saved that record collection, or just to bring it current, a playlist on Spotify. Making an intention around your auditory experience can be a great, very, very healing act of self-care. And I emphasize this one in particular because they've done so much research on increasing the sense of health and wellness through auditory. So that is one sensory experience that I really recommend you explore. Smell, so our sense of smell, right? So we talked about, sourcing coffee. I source my tea from Wildflower Apothecary, who is just a wonderful partner to Angel Aid. And the reason I source from Wildflower Apothecary is because these are all natural flowers and herbs. So just as you go to use any of the products or the teas, you're just getting wafts of experience. And in fact, I'm just going to take a moment. I do this before every presentation. My daughter and I developed with Wildflower a signature scent. It's called C2 for Chloe and Crystal. So C2 Ocean Blue. And I just spray that now and again into the room. And it's almost like an instantaneous sense of calm that comes over me. It's a scent-induced state. And if you can ritualize that, bring it into your daily practice, it can be very, very powerful. And sight. So I saved sight for last. Wonder Woman was my archetype. She was my goddess as I was going through treatment, to the point where I wore like full Wonder Woman costumes to the hospital just to give a boost to the nurses and my doctor. But that visual reminder of strength carried far beyond the treatment into other experiences where I needed strength. So past treatment, there was that sort of residual effect of, okay, now I have to go to a Christmas party, or now I have to go to a school event, and people are going to ask me how I'm doing. And that's such a loaded question. I have a pact with my mom. We don't ask, how are you doing? We ask, what did you do in the last hour? Or, what did you have for breakfast? We have very different set of questions than we ask, how are you? Because that's such a loaded question. But I knew I was always going to get asked it, and I am often asked it. And so what I do is I use visual reminders, jewelry, especially for women, but men can have the same in terms of the shirts that you wear, maybe a t-shirt with some sort of like really cool logo that empowers you, or, when you throw on that one jacket, it makes you feel like Superman, and you're heading out. And same with jewelry. Having in this case, we have a partnership with Collective Hearts, and just that visual symbol makes me feel supported. I know that there's an army of supporters behind me, and I don't have my bracelets on today. I do have my earrings on, but would often, literally load up with jewelry before I would head to a holiday party or a school event or something, so that I could look down and just know I can get through this. I can get through this. And that was, and still is, just an ongoing act of self-care. Okay, so we talked about those senses, and I hope that you found out of that some element of inspiration, that there would be, one or two small acts that you can do for yourself that can be done repetitively as an act of sensory self-care. And it's my alarm just to remind me that we're 15 minutes out. So couple of things about Angel Aid that I just will mention. We offer wellness retreats. Since COVID-19, we've shifted all of our services online. It was always our plan to do that, but we established a partnership with Microsoft and literally took everything into an online portal in 45 days. So, so thank you very much to our volunteers, staff, and our partners for getting us there. Community and connection is what we think is truly the ultimate environment for not only recognizing that empathy, but bringing together a rare mom with another rare mom, and you'll find your community if ours is not your community from a rare mom standpoint, but you're still welcome. We view the community as angel aid, and so when you come into our online portal, you have an option to join as a rare mom or join as a supporter and still have access to all of the workshops and wellness posts that we do on both a non-paid and paid basis. And we believe that gifting, uplifting gifting, is a core program at Angel Aid. We send out care packages to mothers periodically throughout the year, and just those visual reminders, it's typically jewelry, sometimes candles or other kinds of sensory acts of self-care. But those are those services that have been informed by the research that we did with Indiana University. Just really basic, back to the basics, connection, community, visual and sensory reminders of self-care. That's the world that we live in. I just want to remind you that empathy starts with you, and encourage you to find those just radical acts of self-care that you can embrace just in micro moments of your day. And I wanted to circle back in closing on that couple, Richard and Phyllis, that experienced such difficulty in their early life, and let you know that with time comes perspective. So even though my parents divorced when I was 3, they each remarried again, shorter term marriages, 5 to 7 years, and divorced again. And then they each remarried again for the 3rd time, longer term, lifelong marriages, except for they widowed. 20 years later, they each widowed within a year of each other, right when my daughter was born. And so here this miracle baby has come into the Barrett family, despite all of the tragedy and difficulty that we suffered with MPS. And Chloe has been the unifying agent in our family. And my parents actually got back together. So after 35 years apart, they've been back together for the last dozen years. And this is just a story of love and real empathy that has come from their life experience. They have a great, they take great care with each other. And I encourage you to do the same. What my mother says, this is a picture of Phyllis. She says, is these rare mothers, they bring a degree of joy, solace, and peace that I've never felt before. And so in those micro moments a day of self-care, just remember to connect with others. And if you need a community to connect with us. I'm so grateful for your time. I could just go on and on about these subjects, but for now I'm going to stop and open it up to a Q&A. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Crystal. Your story is amazing, and thank you so much for shining a light on an interesting subject that often gets overlooked, and for looking out for our caregivers. You and your family have been through so much, and it's really amazing to see that you're taking what life handed to you, and instead of getting lost in it, you took what was given and are working to help others get through similar situations, and that is truly a gift. So from somebody who deals with EDS and has a mom and a dad that are very dedicated, thank you so much for looking out for our caregivers. It's really appreciated. We do have a couple questions in. We got 2 in on email. They also came with a little message. It says, sorry I could not make the webinar. As you know, life with COVID is crazy, but I do have a question. Do you have any advice if you are the main caregiver but aren't getting support from family or friends that you need?
Uh, yes. So there's so many resources available within a specific disease community, but also outside the disease community. So I just had a conversation with a mom the other day. So she was feeling so lost, just feeling like I'm having a really difficult time finding the support. I don't know where to turn. And what was interesting is in literally like a 5-minute Google search, I was able to find local resources, support groups of other mothers that are getting together regularly by just expanding the lens of what she was thinking of in terms of support. So in her mind, it needed to come from the insular family, and so I said, okay, well, let's go beyond that, and let's go beyond actually the disease and looking at those, because sometimes there's just a few organizations for a specific disease set, and so you feel like, I know that community, actually I'm really embedded with that community, but I'm still not getting the support I need. So we actually went broader and looked at special needs support groups for her. That wasn't a keyword she ever even really thought to type in. So, my advice would be sit down and make a list of, 10 to 20 different avenues that you haven't tried before. Could it be your hospital? Could it be the foundation specifically for your disease set? Could it be Global Genes or Angel Aid or one of the other, NORD, or one of the umbrella organizations? Can you reach out to them? We all have either a concierge service or a hotline or some sort of mechanism to help source support. And I'll tell you, I spend a lot of time looking outside even the rare disease space. There are incredible models for support in military and veteran communities, for example, or in senior care. And we might not be thinking about it. So if you go through that exercise where you kind of force yourself to do a bubble brainstorm, support in the middle, and then do 10 or 20. And I would suspect that you'll be able to find it. But if you can't, then you reach out to one of us and we will help you.
Alrighty, thank you so much. And thank you for being so reassuring as well. I'm sure that's extremely helpful. Another question, sort of related to COVID. What would you think would help keep parents together through this current stress? So you've got this regular stress of being a caregiver, and now this added addition of all of us dealing with COVID-19. Any tips or tricks you can give to help keep things as calm as possible?
Yeah. I mean, it is a tricky time right now. And we're in various different containers, right? Some of us are living in apartments, some of us are living in large homes, some of us, are with family, and some are isolated. And so what I would say is, just as I recommend ritualizing moments of self-care, I would say be creative and ritualize moments of family care. So share a meal, at least one meal a day, where the whole family is coming together. And sometimes it's not dinner. I mean, it seems obvious that it might be dinner, but sometimes that's just not good, based on work schedules or biorhythms, or, sometimes breakfast is a great, time to come together, or lunch. But having that one meal, even if it's 15 or 20 minutes, where the family is all sitting down together and being reminded that you are a family unit, and that, these are your people. I mean, they might drive you crazy for the rest of the day, but at the end of the day, these are your people. And that can be really powerful. For some people, some families, prayer and blessings and holding hands, giving thanks, whatever that is. In our family, we like to light a candle and just remember those that we've lost and those that are close to our heart but aren't in our presence. Like my parents are down in Southern California. So I light a candle every single day in the morning when I'm making my coffee and kind of kicking off my day. And my family watches me do that. And so then it becomes this ritualized practice that I do. And so then it's not so weird when I then want to do it, at a meal. So that's what I would say. Communication, obviously, but I would say daily practice of being connected and lots of hugging.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those tips. And a good reminder that, once we're past this COVID-19 crisis, this pandemic, that those are things we should continue to keep in our daily lives, because it's always good to just make time to connect, like you say. So great for COVID and great for every other day as well. Just to follow up on that same subject, we got a message. It says, "Thank you so much, Crystal. I loved all of the reminders about self-care and addressing the 5 senses. Quick question, how do you think COVID relates to CTSD?"
Yeah, right. So we actually started an interview series called Welcome to Our World, right? I think there's actually, we were talking about connection. There's this incredible opportunity for the general public to experience and is experiencing what we experience in the rare disease community all the time. So social isolation, homeschooling, and medical uncertainty are kind of the 3 themes that we're all living with right now. And there's just this, I think, I hope much more awareness now, personal awareness for individuals outside of our community and our experience to really relate. Wow, I didn't think about it. In fact, a mom told me a story the other day. She was talking about how she doesn't fly commercially because her daughter has autoimmune challenges, and she worries so much about the germs and things like that. And last year, they needed to take a family vacation. So they made this decision and they got on the plane, and she had brought a twin sheet, and she laid the sheet over the seat, including the handles and everything like that. And this man walked by and he was like, "Wow, that's extreme," kind of jokingly. And, and she sucked it up. She didn't make a big deal about it, but she never forgot it. And she said, "I wonder if now he is remembering that moment, that it doesn't seem so ridiculous now, that we're all kind of in this heightened awareness." Same thing with wearing masks and gloves. It used to seem so extreme and now is normalized. And there's an opportunity for us to bridge the gap of understanding by using this shared experience as a way to kind of describe, wow, this doesn't ever actually go away for me. It's always like this.
Yeah, those are some very good points. I know we've brought those up on some of our Let's Chat COVID talks. It's a very big concern and very, very interesting observation as well, that what was quote unquote normal for the chronic illness population has become standard. And it's like, okay, cool, maybe people will understand us more. So hopefully we do bridge those connections, because that would be really good support for our entire community. Follow up on what you just mentioned. How do we view the series you mentioned, Welcome to Our World?
Oh yeah, so thank you. I would love for you. So we have just launched our YouTube channel, Angel Aid Cares, and I just am receiving those videos back from editing. So I think the first video goes up on May 1st, which is tomorrow. So you'll be able to see Annika Atkins, who's a rare mom. Her daughter has Pompe disease and receives weekly infusions, and actually has a buddy in the EDS world who also receives infusions. So yeah, I encourage you to look for those interviews on YouTube on our Angel Aid channel. I'm aiming to do one a week. So we have a backlog of 3 so far, and we'll be building that library as we go forward.
Sounds good. I put in the chat the YouTube channel name. So if you guys want to grab that before the webinar ends, that would be awesome. So just check chat for the information. Next question is, do you know how to possibly get qualified to get paid for being a caregiver of one of your own chronically ill children?
Ooh, that's a very, very specific question.
Yes.
I've been asked it before, and it really comes down to some state levels of state requirements, and my recommendation would be to reach out to the National Caregivers Alliance. They really specialize in caregiver as a profession and as a paid sort of function, whereas Angel Aid is very focused on the health and wellness side of caregiving and sustainable caregiving. The National Caregivers Alliance would be a great resource to get guidance there.
Alrighty, thank you so much. I know that was a little specific, but
it's okay. Legit.
It's good to know that there is help out there if needed, especially for our chronic moms and dads, because they've got lives to live and jobs to work, and any bit of support that you can get, be it through others, be it through the government, any support helps, right?
Yeah, and it's a big topic. I'm on the RGALS Council. It's the Rare Global Alliance Leadership Council for Global Genes, and what that does is gives an opportunity for representatives from different countries to share best practices and also kind of an understanding. And it's really obvious that other countries are doing it better than in the United States, that there are already models in Australia and in the UK and other countries for recognizing caregivers as an essential part of treatment and health. And in the United States, we tend to have a very patient-centered focus, and that is appropriate and important. But if we pull the lens back just a bit and include the family nucleus, and that might be maybe not a family member, but also a paid caregiver coming in, that there's all sorts of ways to engage those individuals for the general wellness of the individual, and paying for those acts of care is something that we will need to affect change in legislation. So that's really an advocacy and a lobbying effort. And the National Caregivers Alliance is kind of squarely in that place. We don't do lobbying at Angel Aid specifically, but if you're passionate about it, I encourage you to step up as an advocate for caregivers as well.
All right, well, thank you so much, Crystal. I'm glad we had you out today, and I'm glad that we have your voice looking to support our caregivers. I know I'm not a caregiver personally, but I appreciate it. So you've provided a lot of great information. So hopefully some of our caregivers have at least gotten a peace of mind from today's webinar. I noticed that you put your email address up. Is it okay for attendees to reach out for you with questions?
Yes, please. And also, it's one thing to have a one-on-one conversation with me, and I'm so open to that, but I do think it's so important to be in community. And so I encourage anyone who is on the line now or watches the recording later to please go to angelaidcares.org And right at the top, it says join our community. And you can come into this environment. We built our community on a different platform than Facebook. So we decided not to build community on Facebook for various reasons. We're still very active on Facebook, but we built our community on Mighty Networks. It gives us a place to have more concentrated and quiet conversations without all of the advertising and the friends and family posts. And so that's where we run, you know, our wellness offerings, and that's where our community sort of lives. So we have a Rare Moms track, but we also have a supporters track that is sort of indicative of everybody. So we'd love to see you there.
Alrighty, that is really awesome. Thank you so much. And just a reminder that along with Angel Aid, you can also check out our website for resource and information. You can give our helpline a call or an email, and sign up for a newsletter if you haven't already. It's a fantastic source for the most up-to-date information and upcoming events, including what our next webinars are going to be. And now, speaking on that subject, our next webinar will be on May 8th. We have Shani Weber joining us again, and this time she's going to talk about how you can be an advocate from home. Now, this is a great webinar to attend because along with providing you information on how to be the best advocate you can be from home, it will also help you plan to take any of our Acts of Awareness challenges for Awareness Month that we have posted. Now, this next Awareness Month is going to be different than any Awareness Month we have done in the past because obviously everything has to be virtual. So by having this webinar, we're going to do our best to give you tips and tricks to how to be the best advocate you can be while being stuck at home. Whether that's from COVID, whether that's from how your health is treating you at a time, but there are so many ways that you can be an amazing advocate from at home, and hopefully Shani will help explain some of those a little bit better. You can look out for the sign up for that next webinar on our website and various social media platforms. Now, technology permitting, this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel within about a week or so, depending on post-production. Now, if you found this webinar or any of our other webinars helpful, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe to our channel so you can be alerted to when we're uploading our videos. Once again, amazing webinar. Thank you so much, Crystal. That is some amazing support for not just our community, but the carers of our community. So I hope that you and everybody that joined us today has a safe and healthy rest of your day.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.